You too.
So first question I have for you is how and why did you get into entertainment?
I went to college as a voice major. I sort of went to train to be an opera singer, which I didn't really want to be, but I kind of thought that's what I had to be in my family in order to be an entertainer. My I knew I wanted to be an actress from the first part that I played. I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't really know like how to say that out loud. So I went to Northwestern to be a voice major, which was my sort of like soft way, my secret way in. And then after my freshman year, I dropped out of the music school, transferred to the communication school and graduated, and I started doing improv there. So as soon as I started doing improv, I realized, oh, I think I'm might be good at doing comedy. And at that time, it was the '90s. There weren't like a lot of women that were doing it really, and so um, it just seemed like, I don't know, it just seemed like an easy, not an easy way, never easy. None of it ever seemed easy, but it just felt like a calling, for lack of a better word. And I think that when you sing, when one sings, or when one has like the gift of a voice, um, I say with great humility because I know other people sing way better than I do. But I also, when you do something like that, it's how I would imagine, like, if you're like a naturally gifted athlete or something, like a lot of people pay attention to that quality when it's a gift. And so I knew that I could do that in a way that other people couldn't, just organically. And so I kind of always understood that that was something I would probably end up doing, if that makes any sense.
Do
Like,
you remember what it was like landing your first role? And was that according to IMDb, it says the soup Nazi and you played woman. Was is that
um,
accurate?
well, there were like, there were a few things on the way. Yeah, no, no, no. So my first official real job that I got paid for was in the children's chorus of the Washington Opera. So I was like an opera chorus kid and got paychecks for that. And then because I had done improv at Northwestern, um, through some random, through people that I knew, someone was an assistant voiceover agent and called me in for voiceover jobs because they knew I was good at characters because I had been a pretty well-known comic person on campus. And so, yeah, I did a Wiener Schnitzel radio commercial and I felt like I had arrived. And 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 then I did the Groundlings. So I had a bunch of little steps between graduating from college and the Seinfeld moment. Um, I was on the national tour of the Real Live Brady Bunch, which was Jill Soloway's very first um, shindig. It was Jill and Faith at the time. Jill, no longer Jill. They did like live productions of Brady Bunch episodes, and so I went on the
Mhm.
national tour of that to all these colleges, and I came back and I kept taking Groundlings classes. Then I got into the Groundlings here in LA and into the Sunday Company, and that's when I got an agent and got Seinfeld and other little parts. It's a
So
long.
what's your big moment? What's like the one moment when you said I've made it and I'm an actress?
Okay, so this is going to be a really, again, like spiritual lecture answer, but
That's
I
fine.
wouldn't say it was
Love
a
it.
job. It was actually a moment where I decided I just have to start saying I'm an actress because you're pretty much, you're just self-identified as an actor. Actors are people who want to be acting and stuff. And, most of the days of the year they're not acting and stuff, and some of the days of the year they are. And so it was like really a conscious choice as opposed to saying, I'm a waitress but I secretly want to be an actress. I was able to just say, oh no, I'm an actress. And at any given time, I'm trying to work as an actor. Yeah. And so I actually think it's a really important moment because it's a moment where you start saying it out loud to other people as opposed to waiting for other people to tell you that that's what you are. And the other thing is that because I was an improviser and I came from a writer performer background, I could always be writing something or working on something. And so by virtue of that, I could kind of call myself a writer performer, from the beginning.
Yeah, as an artist, I still can't say it. I was always an artist, but I like when someone says, "What do?" You don't say I'm an artist. It feels like I don't know. It just says it seems like someone has to like christen you an
I
artist and
know it
say
feels
you are now an artist.
It feels like arrogant or something, but I actually
Yeah,
think it's incredibly important in the sort of like most Tony Robbins way to define it for yourself because really like you're constantly being asked, especially if you're a fine artist or an artist or a writer or something that's someone who's making things, you can be doing that any day of the week, whether or not someone's paying you for it, you know? And the fact of the
Hmm.
matter is, it was just funny. I was just having lunch with Amy Poehler, and we were talking about the amount of stuff that you do as part of once you start working for a living and you get your weekly episodic, you know, weekly fee or your episodic fee, you do so much stuff on the other on behind the scenes that you aren't paid for, you know, promotion and you know, half the time you're paying for it yourself. So it's really about definition for yourself, no matter how successful you become.
So now you have the lead in American Auto playing Catherine Hastings. Is this is your first lead, correct? Your first
Uh,
lead in a series, a TV
in a
series?
series, yeah, yeah. I've been a
How
lead on Broadway, but not. Yeah.
what was that like? You know, landing that role, and you know, and how
Well,
important it is to you, you know, for you personally.
I mean, it's not that important. I mean, it's not like I've been sitting
Oh,
around my whole life saying, I can't wait till I'm the lead. To me, it's much more important that I'm an ensemble member. I mean, it's
mhm.
organic and it works because she is the boss and she is the CEO, and it helps that I'm number one in the sense that it kind of sets, you know, these things have this kind of life and art way of bleeding into one another. And so I think it probably endows me with a certain amount of authority. But also, frankly, like I'm the oldest member in our cast. I've been working the longest. I've been a member of the guild the longest, you know, so I think I do a fair amount of kind of like, I wouldn't say caregiving, but example setting and conversation having, you know, as one would as a senior member of a staff. It sort of falls upon you to set the tone and take care of the people that you work with, you know. But I was mostly grateful that it was a really good ensemble because I love ensemble work.
Mhm.
That's where I come from. That's what I do. Saturday Night Live, all the way through everything that I've done, and even on People of Earth, like I was the therapist who ran you know, the therapy group. There's a certain sense of leadership that I've had in the work I've done before. So
So it's about the team. This is when like getting to the top of the of Mount Everest type achievement. It's more just, you know,
it's
part of
lovely.
what you do.
They definitely treat you really well when, you know, it was hilarious. I mean, people have been calling me Anna my entire career, and like the first week of the pilot, I sort of stopped and looked around and thought about it. I was like, no one has called me Anna yet, and I said it out loud to one of our ads. I was like, so weird. um Nobody's called me Anna. And she was like, oh no, we made an announcement like from the beginning. Like they don't do that when you're not number one, you know. So that was kind of nice. But I you know, and it's a nice position to be in, but it's not. I think it's more of a responsibility than it is a privilege.
For those who have not watched the series yet, can you describe your character and explain why she's so funny?
Catherine Hastings is the CEO of Payne Motors, which is an American car company. She's the first female CEO, and as you would assume in the automotive industry, they're not a common thing. There's only, you know, very few women who are CEOs, period, let alone of automotive industry. Although in real life, Mary Barra is actually a CEO, and Catherine Hastings comes from pharmaceuticals. She's probably got pretty questionable ethics, but she's pretty good at leadership and she doesn't know anything about cars. She's the CEO type that doesn't really believe that you have to know your product to sell it. You just have to sell it. So that's sort of her base conundrum, is that she's stuck in a situation where she needs help from the people around her, the staff that she has inherited, because they know about cars and she doesn't, and they have to deal with her not knowing about cars. In a nutshell, that's sort of season one. You know, fish out of water in big American corporate life. And I think the show singularly skewers corporate America. I think it's we haven't seen a half hour. We've seen workplace half hours, and this is definitely in that DNA, that NBC workplace DNA. But I do think that the show tackles kind of not only the issues of the C-suite and the people at the top of the stairs, but it also calls out a lot of contemporary American social and political issues in the workplace.
Yeah, I was going to mention that it kind of subverts expectations going in. You're expecting a show about American Auto, and you get
Yeah.
so much more. It's much more layered and much, you know, every episode too tackles something a little bit different. And the way they do it though is not in a way that you'd expect. You know, you have to shoot the commercial, which
Yeah.
touches upon so many things. The serial killer driving the car, which touches upon
Yeah.
some privacy issues
Yeah.
and big business and all that. It's
Yeah, I mean, it's really sort of, you know, that America is influenced by its relationship to capitalism and to corporate America. I mean, that's obviously, we've been examining that culturally for a while in the form of shows like whatever Succession and Billions, and but I feel like this is actually um, kind of calling out the Venn diagram of the human beings and how who work in those places, and how their ethics influence the company, and how the bottom line of the company influences their ethics, if that makes any sense.
As for your character, do you like her?
I do like her. I feel for her. I feel that she's in over her head at times, and I feel that I do think she's intelligent, which is helpful. I mean, I think at first I wanted to play her like she wasn't, and Justin was Spitzer, who's our showrunner, was very insistent that she was, and that she was a pretty capable CEO, but that she definitely was in a world that she didn't understand the half of. And I kind of admire her blind faith in her ability to do things. I think she sort of like crashes through situations that I would have, called a car and gone home on.
Yeah, she seems to every time she tries to dig herself out of a hole, ends up making it a little bit deeper, but then somehow at the end pulls her way out in the last second.
Yeah, well, that's television for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have a favorite episode so far?
You mentioned the commercial. I love it. I think it's so smartly written. I think Justin's a fantastic writer. I think comedically he writes in a very complex way. It feels like a little Rubik's cube. He can accomplish an incredible amount in 21 minutes. And it's not so like A story, B story, A story, B story. I think it tends to sort of have this little Rubik's cube that you might start with A and end with G, but it sort of resolves itself. So it's fun to play his writing, frankly. I also just love ensemble scenes. I love how everybody's kind of selfish and self-motivated in a crowd. And I think he's really good at writing to that. And I think we're good as a team performing it. And it's fun to do, frankly. It's very symphonic, if you will. And so I love that, and I love anything that calls my ethics into question. Any situation where
Yeah.
I sort of act as though I'm going to behave one way and end up radically, diverging from that. So I love the earnings call episode. I love the episode where we have a morale crisis, and I'm trying to figure out why, and then I just end up firing everybody. It's fun. It's a really fun show. It's fun to play somebody so confident and so fumfering at the same time.
And it's such smart humor, but it's also a lot racier than I expected at times. Does it ever surprise you when you get the script and you read through it, like just what you're tackling and how they do it?
Yeah, I think for
How clever.
anyone, when you first sign on, and again, remember, we all signed on in 2020, right before COVID and right before the shutdown. So even in that period of time between 2020 and 2022, again, I think what you think of as network comedy is we're no longer playing by those rules, and it's been a real surprise, I have to say. I think the writing is very brave. I think the show is very diverse. I mean, not just a female executive lead, but like, which is in and of itself kind of fun. We have an extremely diverse cast. We have an extremely we touch upon a lot of, as we were saying, social political issues. So without being like it's not a cause oriented show. It's just we say things that are uncomfortable and funny to say.
It's gutsy, is what I noticed.
There you go. It's gutsy. And there were when we set out to make a lot of these episodes, there's this like kind of like the old SNLer in me is like, where's the standards and practices people? But NBC has been I think it's what makes it a good show. And I appreciate that it's not softened or dumbed down or watered out. I think audiences are, especially after having a steady diet of streaming for so long, audiences are really comfortable with edges.
Yeah. There's the blow your load and the peephole physical comedy for the peephole joke. I was like,
Oh my God, I completely
this is
forgot.
NBC. You have to like check
I
your,
know. I know.
check the dial. Something's wrong here. But yeah,
know.
times have changed.
Times have changed.
Yeah. So you've got this great group of actors and actresses that you work with. What's it like on set?
It's fun. It's a really good group of humans, and again, we shot the pilot, like I said, deep under the cover of COVID, so we were the only faces that we were seeing. I never even saw that bottom half of our crew's face ever, because they were all in like hazmat suits all the way through. So cast were the only people with whom we were like, oh, I understand what the bottom half of your face looks like. So there's a nice bond there that I think developed quickly, because we had to sort of rely upon one another in this bubble where we really weren't having, as you know, I mean, none of us were. We were all in our apartments, and
Mhm.
suddenly we were on set, and those were the other humans we saw besides the people we're, related to or, rooming with.
And you got some really good news within the last week. You have
Yeah,
season 2 coming, which is
season
fantastic.
two, it is fantastic.
If you want to, you can go open the champagne that I left in your desk.
Oh, thank you. Yes, no, we are very, very excited, and it was great news. It was NBC took their time, like putting together next year. So I was really hopeful, and I'm really grateful that we get to go ahead and make more of them because it takes a minute for a show to find its feet. I think we found our feet, and I'm excited to see what's next.
And right now, with the way media is and content,
Hmm.
it's you have to find your audience. It has to take a little while before
Hmm.
you know even the top shows out there right now. I think a lot of them were kind of more I'd say, I don't know if this is the right term, but cult hits, and then it's once
Yeah,
you get that momentum, it blows up. And I
yeah, it
really
takes a
think,
minute for sure.
yeah, yeah, I'm glad they're patient. I'm excited to see more coming next year.
Thank you.
So I want to touch upon a little bit of your SNL work, which
Sure.
of course, you know, absolutely fantastic. Um, do your friendships continue
Oh yeah,
from?
very much so. I mean, as I mentioned, Amy earlier, I mean, the women in particular, we kind of all we stay very much on each other's support teams, and we spend a lot of time together. Frankly, we talk. We have a text chain. We talk probably daily.
Oh,
Um,
that's fantastic.
yeah, it is. I mean, the relationships across the board at Saturday Night. It's such an incredibly weird mafia to be a part of, um, and fraternity and whatever other euphemisms I can use for it. You kind of don't ever leave and you can't escape. But it's also an incredible history. I mean, there's a shorthand and a speed with which you work. Rachel Dratch and I wrote a movie together last year and produced it together. But again, just having like the speed where you can do those things and understand inherently that the other person understands the way you work. It's not like anything else I can describe. There's a way of being with other SNL people that's very it's almost like a mutant gene. So there is collaboration that happens over the years across casts. I mean, I've worked with people who I wasn't even on the show with, Yorma Taccone or Fred Armisen, or people that, you just have an immediate kinship with um, and understanding with.
That's incredible. Do you just show the ring and like, okay, we're in the club,
Yeah, it's
and
a
then you're,
handshake. It's a handshake. I
yeah,
wish I
oh,
could
is it a
show it to
handshake?
you. I would show it to you, but again, you're not. No,
Uh,
no,
uh,
nothing personal. But my family
yeah,
doesn't.
no.
Yeah,
Maybe some year I'll audition and
yeah. You should
all
audition.
will go well.
I hear the cast
Yeah,
is having some changes.
so right down the road, I'll make it happen. So you still talk to Molly? I
Yeah,
guess.
I haven't seen Molly in a while, but yeah, we all did that Betty White episode, now
Mhm.
11 years ago, which was really kind of an incredible homecoming for so many of the women. And then there was a women's special, and yeah,
I'm talking to her next week. Do you want to send a message?
tell her I said hello and congrats on her book.
Oh, I will do so. And if she sends one back, then we have to set up a time to speak again, so I can.
We'll do that.
Not the most efficient communication, but hey, I'll take it.
It'll be like the old-fashioned letter writing campaign.
Yeah. And then Steve said, and then so. So, which sketch do you have the fondest memories of?
Well, definitely NPR, since you mentioned Molly. Obviously, that there was a quiet to that sketch that was always sort of hilarious and fun to play in the midst of the sort of mayhem of the show. It was like this little, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but just we had the actual headphones, plus the characters are quiet, plus it just sort of lived in a really quiet place. Yeah, it's like a very quiet sketch, and so it's just had its own little like rhythmic. I don't know, it helped you handle the kind of mayhem and crazy. And then the music teacher sketch I loved doing so much with Will Ferrell and
Yes,
Paula Pell. We
with
wrote
Wolfman.
those together. They were fun to write. They were fun to perform. They sort of were like infamous at the show in the sense that we procrastinated like hours and hours and hours and hours, but it was always sort of a joy bomb week after week to do that.
If you could go back, would you to the show and work on the show again today? Would you?
It's too hard to answer that. It's so, yes, of course. There's always a there's enormous joy in working there. There's, if you have the skill set, the adrenaline itself is very addictive. It's very fun. But it's very, I mean, no, probably not just from a practical standpoint, because I don't,
Mhm.
the one thing about that show is that it really consumes your entire life. You can't, it's best suited. It was really great for that time in my life before I had children and before I was, you know, trying to achieve a work-life balance, you know? So, sure, I would. Anytime they ask me back, I go back and I love it. But in a regular way, it's a very hard show to, it's completely all consuming. It's impossible to, every time I go back, even just to, you know, for whatever, to do a sketch or something, it's like Monday. And then the next thing you know, it's the following week and you have 27, you know,
Mhm.
unanswered phone calls. So it's just, because it's nocturnal, because it's last minute, it's always like finals week. You're just working as hard as you can quickly.
But if you could snap your fingers, show up there Saturday night, finish, snap your fingers, and be back in bed, you'd be doing it till you retire.
I mean, I don't even know how to answer that question. Like it first of all, like any workplace, it's not just about Saturday night. So much of what's fun there is
Mhm.
Tuesday night and Thursday rehearsal and rewrite table and like I actually love all of the behind the scenes of the show almost more than I loved doing the show. I love doing the show, but like that the creative process all happens Monday through, like I would never be. It's funny because when I had my daughter is and that's when I left the show now, 20 years ago. And at the time I determined to leave. Lauren was like, you don't have to write. You can just come to the show. And I remember saying like that would be impossible. I wouldn't know how to be at the show and not write. Like that's what other entertainment is all about. Just
Mhm.
showing up and saying somebody else's words. SNL is all about being completely and utterly cellularly involved in the creative process there.
It's the full experience.
Yeah.
It's not just the live part. It's
No, it's
everything in
all of
between.
it. It's all of it. It
Yeah.
makes it so fun. Yeah.
Well, that's too bad because I have a genie here. I'll tell him to go. He was going to give you that power to do it. So
Very nice. Very
sorry,
thoughtful.
fans.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
I'll use the wish for something else like air conditioning.
Well, you can wish for me to host. How about that?
Oh, perfect.
There we go.
Hey, you know what? That's a great idea. I love
Thanks.
it. Do you want your children to follow in your footsteps? Do they have the bug?
They both sort of do in different ways. And it's funny, I remember a long time ago, not to name drop, but I remember, you know, the sort of knee jerk is usually people like, oh God, no, this business is so hard. It's like a very cynical reply. But I remember one time, this is my name drop, Andrea Martin was talking about, she was like, wouldn't you love it if your kids were in this business? It's so fun. And there is this part of me that's like, it is so fun what we do. I feel so lucky. My colleagues are interesting. My colleagues are funny. My work is ridiculous. I love what I do for a living. And yes, I would love for my children to do that if that's what they
Oh,
wanted to
great.
do, you know? I mean, I would want them to do it in whatever way they wanted for themselves. I have a feeling that if they were to go into it, it would be in their own version of it. Because everybody has to carve their own little path, you know? There's no predictive, you don't go to drama school, it's like law school and then become this kind of actor, you know? You meet people who do it all different kind of ways, and it's even more so than ever before. You meet people who create stuff on the internet, you meet people who do
Mhm.
sketch, you meet people who write one person shows, and you meet people who model and then become actresses, and then, you know, there's just a million ways. Or people who go to Yale and never work, you know, there's all different versions. So hopefully they'll find the one that works for them.
So, real quick,
You have to
I
have your
didn't.
cocktail,
I'm
Steve.
yeah, I know, but I want to get these questions in. So I'll have to. Someone bring the cocktail now.
Yeah,
Okay.
come on, get the
So
genie. What's the genie for if not to bring you a cocktail?
I don't want to. You know what? I'll waste it. Cocktail, please. Oh my! Look at it. Worked.
Hey,
Thanks, buddy. Okay.
well
All
done.
right. There's my audition. If you see me on next season, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I knew you could sing. I didn't know that you were a full-blown singer. So I was doing a little bit of research last night.
Oh
I
wow.
pulled up a YouTube clip of you on PBS. I found out you were the lead in the Chicago, and on Broadway. You were on for, I'm blanking here, for Wicked.
Wicked, yeah.
Yeah, and I watched you sing, and I was like almost brought to tears. That was just beautiful. And you mentioned your daughter, and which I have two daughters. So once you make that connection, it really sinks in. But blown away by your ability. So then I did a little more research, and I pull up that you have a Christmas album, Sugar and
Yeah.
Booze. which I didn't know of either, which I will be buying this year.
Yay.
So I listened to a couple of your songs, and it was just fantastic. I'm just amazed by how, just how talented you are. And when someone is known for acting and for comedy, and like I said, you sing on SNL, one of your most popular characters, but doing albums, going on Broadway, and all that is just a different level. I just want to say it's just spectacular. I love to see that. It's
Thank you. I mean, it's fun. Everybody has, like everybody gets known for one thing. And to be fair, I shelved it. I went to be an actual singer, like I said, to college, and then I just sort of put it on the shelf, became an improviser, followed the path down the comedy thing. And when you do improv and sketch, you have a toolbox and you might pull from the toolbox, but not in any kind of sincere way. And so when I left SNL, I sort of, my like little Broadway dreams looked like they might be fulfilled because I lived in New York and casting directors do call you to sing. And so I just sort of doubled down and worked really, really hard at it at that point, and then did a bunch of Broadway shows and a bunch of off-Broadway shows. And then it was fun with my jazz act, like that's much more me. And because Broadway's pretty buttoned up and that kind of felt pretty tidy for me. So when I started singing and writing my own music, the kind of ridiculous jazz and old school entertainer felt much more natural to me. So the Christmas album was a real labor of love because I wrote ridiculously happy, jazzy songs about the holidays and old fashioned kind of cocktail music, which I happen to love. So I feel really lucky that I've gotten to do all of the things that I do, and to sort of to circle back to your sort of how does it feel to be number one? I mean, I think to be number one, you kind of have to do one thing and just stick at it. And I haven't really done that. I've followed a lot of branches and a lot of directions, but as a result, I get the satisfaction of having tried a lot of things and never getting bored. So
yeah. I look forward to having Sugar and Booze in my rotation this year around the holidays.
Awesome. Thank you.
So real quick to close out, 3 words. 3 words to describe yourself.
Describe Anna?
Yes, describe Anna. I was going to go with your character, but you know what? You surprised me a bunch today, so.
I did?
Yeah, sure.
3 words to describe me. Verbal, earthy, and tired. No, and I would say verbal, earthy, and happy. I'm a happy person.
You say Poppy?
Happy.
Oh, happy. Okay. Poppy's my daughter's middle name. I was like, wait,
oh, I love the name Poppy. Oh. I would say fortunate too, but that's 4.
That's 4. You know what? We'll tag it on. We'll put parentheses around it. So thank you so much for the time.
I really
best
appreciate
of luck.
It. And good luck beating the heat.
Yeah, thank you. And congratulations on season 2.
Thank you so much. Thanks for supporting the show. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, oh, of course.